Many people can't differentiate between being rich and being financially free. They think that first, you need to be rich to be financially free, but that's not true. Financial freedom comes first because it's easier and faster to do. Let me ask you a question. Is it easier to climb a ladder that has only 10 steps or a ladder that has 1,000 steps? Of course, the 10-step ladder is easier, right? By using this analogy, we can say that becoming financially free is like climbing the 10-step ladder, and becoming rich is like climbing the 1,000-step ladder. First, try the easier goal and be financially free. Once you have the passive income coming and you don't have to work for anyone, then you can use this free time to become rich. Ecker says in his seminar, one of the students realized that if she simply rented her flat and moved to a cheaper place, her passive income from the rent would be enough to cover all her expenses. Plus, she could even save some money. That's exactly what she did. She rented her flat, moved to a cheaper and more exotic place, and became financially free. Only then she started building her business and becoming rich. So first, focus on the 10-step ladder and creating enough passive income so that you don't have to work for someone. Once that's done, then you can think about the rest. Mind your own business. Don't spend your whole life working for someone else. Too many people spend their lives minding someone else's business and making them rich. Minding your business doesn't mean starting a company, though for some people it will. Instead, your business revolves around your asset column, not your income column. Keep your daytime job, but start buying real assets, not liabilities that lose value as soon as you walk out of the store. Keep expenses low, reduce liabilities, and diligently build a base of solid assets. Parents need to teach young people this before they leave home so that they understand what a true asset is and won't find themselves trapped in a lifestyle of debt. Robert says real assets fall into the following categories: businesses that do not require his presence. He owns them, but they are managed or run by other people. If he has to work there, it's not a business, it becomes his job. Number 2, stocks. Number 3, bonds. Number 4, income-generating real estate. 5, royalties from intellectual property, such as music and patents. 6, anything else that has value, produces income, or appreciates and has a ready market. Acquire assets that you love. Robert loves real estate and thus spends most of his time thinking about and shopping for it. If you don't like real estate, don't invest in it. Even while working for Xerox, Robert minded his own business. He kept his day job and slowly built his asset column. The more he understood accounting and cash management, the better he was at analyzing investments and eventually building his own company. He doesn't recommend people start a company unless they really have the desire to. Otherwise, he advises them to keep their day job and mind their business, building and keeping their asset column strong. As cash flow grows, you can indulge in luxuries, but only if the cash flow supports them. Build the asset column and let the income generated by those assets pay for the luxuries. When assets generate enough income to cover luxuries, that's when you can buy them. Here's a question you might ask. How can I find out if right now is the time to focus on saving or investing for me? Here's a simple way. First, find out how much you can comfortably save in the coming year. For example, if you expect to save $1,000 a month, then your expected savings for the entire year should be $12,000. Next, determine how much you expect your investments to bring you in the next year. For example, if you have $10,000 invested and you expect that you will earn a 10% return, then your expected investment earning is $1,000. Finally, compare these two numbers and focus on the one that is higher. If your expected savings are higher, like in the example I just gave, then you need to focus more on saving money and adding it to your investments. However, if the opposite is true, then you should spend more time thinking about how to invest what you already have. If the numbers are in a similar range, then you should focus on both. As many beginning readers do, one of the first few finance books I read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The most important lesson that stuck with me was the difference between an asset and a liability. Rich Dad defined an asset as something that puts money in your pocket and a liability as something that takes money out of your pocket. This lesson is extremely simple but hard to apply in real life. Rich Dad said that getting rich is easy. You only need to do one thing: buy more assets. That is it. If you do that, you will be rich. After reading the book, I became conscious of every single purchase I was making and focused on buying more assets. One of the assets I bought was a real estate property that was generating around $40 in positive cash flow. At that time, I was new to YouTube, but already had a few successful videos and was earning money from the channel. One day, I was looking at my earnings and saw that one of the videos had been making around $40 per month consistently. This was a wake-up moment for me because it made me realize that every single video I'm creating is an asset. It is a digital real estate that produces positive cash flow every month. Both the real estate property and that video produced on average $40 every month. But I spent several months on purchasing the real estate, and it cost me $12,000 in just a down payment. On the other hand, producing that video was just a few $100s, plus I loved every single moment of creating it. This was the moment I started to take YouTube seriously and treat every single video as digital real estate. A conscious spending plan starts with this mindset. Spend extravagantly on the things you love and cut costs mercilessly on the things you don't. That's why automation is critical to successfully getting control over your finances. The beauty of automation is that you have to make a decision once and then maintain it with a little bit of effort. To demonstrate how automation looks like, let's look at Alex and his system as an example. Alex gets paid every month on the 15th. His employer deducts 5% of his pay automatically and puts it in his retirement account. The remaining 95% of Alex's paycheck goes to his checking account. About 2 days later, on the 17th, his automatic money flow begins transferring money out of his checking account. His investment pulls 5% for itself. His savings account pulls another 5%. Now 85% of Alex's money is remaining in his checking account. 1 day later, on the 18th of the month, his system automatically pays his fixed costs like Netflix, cable, loan, insurance, and transfers money automatically for his credit card bills. At this point, the money that remains in his account is used for guilt-free spending. That's the fun money. Since everything important is taken care of automatically, Alex can use this for anything he wants. Alex loves partying and shoes, so he spends $800 a month on just partying and buying new shoes. I hear you judging Alex for wasting money on things such as partying and shoes, but what you don't know is that Alex has a conscious spending plan. Alex lives in a very cheap neighborhood in a very small apartment. For him, an apartment is not important since he's single and he spends most of his time at work. He also doesn't pay any gym membership. He prefers running in the park rather than training at the gym. To put it simply, Alex has identified what are the less important things for him and cut the costs mercilessly on them, and has directed that money into things he loves, such as partying. From outside, he might look like a guy who's not responsible with his money because of his spending on parties and shoes. But in reality, he's ahead of the majority of people. The biggest problem is that most people aren't deciding what's important to them and what's not. Most of us aren't consciously thinking about our spending. We're not looking at the future and planning where our money should go. We're usually going through life doing whatever and seeing our spending patterns from the bills we get at the end of the month. So by the end of the month, Alex has spent less than 2 hours monitoring his finances, yet he has invested 10%, saved 5%, paid all of his bills on time, paid off his credit card, and has spent extravagantly on the things he loves without feeling guilty about it. In the graph, you see 3 people, Billy, Susan, and Kim. All 3 invest $3,000 per year, which is roughly $8.3 per day. And all 3 get a 10% annual return on their investments. Billy starts investing at the age of 15 and only invests for 5 years until the age of 19. Then he simply stops investing and lets his money grow without adding anything extra. Susan starts investing at the age of 19 and invests for 8 years until the age of 26. Finally, Kim starts investing at the age of 27 and keeps investing until the age of 65. She invests $3,000 every year as Billy and Susan do, but she does it for 39 years. Here comes the big question. Who has more money by the age of 65? Well, if you think Kim has the most amount of money because she invested the longest period and the biggest amount, then you're wrong. She actually has the least among the 3. Here are the numbers for the age of 65. Kim has roughly $1.3 million. She invested $117,000 in total. The investment period is 39 years. Susan has $1.5 million. She invested $24,000 in total within 8 years. Finally, Billy has $1.6 million. He invested only $15,000. The investment period is 5 years. As you can see, Billy has the least amount of time and money invested, but despite that, he ended up with the biggest amount of money. Why? Simply because he started earlier. This is the power of time in investing. There is one thing that I just don't like, not just in this book, but in many personal finance books. And that is focusing too much on retirement and talking about how great life will be when you finally retire with $1 million at the age of 65. To me, this personally seems boring. Plus, I don't know if I will be in good health to enjoy that money at the age of 65. I would love to see more financial books talking about getting rich young. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying investing for the long term for retirement is bad or that you shouldn't do it. I personally do it as well, but I don't rely on that to take care of me. It's a nice thing to have, especially since it doesn't take much effort. Once you set it up, it runs itself. I am personally mostly focused on getting rich young through creating businesses. You might have already seen this picture. This is an old couple on vacation. Unfortunately, they are so tired, they can't even enjoy their boat tour. Don't get me wrong, I'm not making fun of this couple. I'm showing it because their picture served as an important reminder for me throughout the years. Here's what I mean. When I started to read personal finance and investing books, I kept getting this advice. If you save a small amount, such as $5 a day, and invest it over the long term, you will have over $1 million in 40 years. Which is true and absolutely makes sense. But I remember having this strange and conflicting feeling whenever I read such advice. First, I would get excited about the possibility of investing a small amount and having $1 million. But I remember after the brief moment of excitement, I would get upset. I would say to myself, okay, yes, I will have $1 million, but I will be old. Do I want to be wealthy when I'm in a wheelchair? Do I want to go on vacation but have no energy and fall asleep? I wanted the $1 million, but not when I was 70. I wanted a nice car, but not when I was old and required physical assistance just to sit in that car. Finally, one day I came across this book called The Millionaire Fast Lane, written by M.J. DeMarco, and it completely changed my life. This book is about getting rich quickly and retiring early by creating a business, inventing something, or simply creating things that can bring you a lot of money when you are young. I know when you hear get rich quick, it sounds scammy. But when the author talks about getting rich quick, he doesn't mean getting rich in just a few weeks or months. For example, if you create a business, you might work on it for 5 or 10 years. But once you succeed, you never have to work again in your life. This is what he calls get rich quick. And if you look at it, 10 years is quick compared to investing for 40 years. Even though this is one of my favorite books and I always recommend it, one thing I don't like about it is that it kind of makes fun of long-term investing. As I said earlier, creating a business has its cost. And some people are completely happy with their job and don't want the stress and the responsibility of having something big. For these people, having an average salary and investing $5 a day for 40 years might be a good option. I personally do it as well, but I don't rely on it to make me rich one day. I guess it all depends on what you truly want. If you want to retire early and never work in your life again, then check this book out. On the other hand, if you are happy with your job and long-term investment, then stay where you are. But also keep in mind that compound interest does its magic at the end of the period. For example, 90% of Warren Buffett's wealth was accumulated after the age of 50. Warren Buffett's skill is investing, but his secret is time. He's been investing since he was just a boy. Today, you're probably earning more than you were 10 years ago. But are you richer now? Do you have more wealth now? Do you save more now? The answer is most likely no. Why is that? Well, because the more we make, the more we spend. How much you earn has almost no impact on whether you build wealth or not. In order to become an automatic millionaire, you've got to accept the idea that, regardless of the size of your paycheck, you probably already make enough money to become rich. Let me repeat that last part. Regardless of the size of your paycheck, you probably already make enough money to become rich. I can already hear you say, "Come on, what I earn is barely enough to cover my expenses by the end of the month, and you're telling me that I can still become rich with that income?" Well, first of all, it is not me who says it, it's the author. And second of all, yes, you are right. You can become rich with whatever you earn right now. I can't stress enough the importance of believing this, not just with your mind, but with your heart as well. This is an aha moment that can truly change your life financially. You're probably wondering at this point what the secret is. Well, the secret is called the Latte Factor. It basically says instead of spending $5 a day on coffee, if you invest that amount, you'll become rich. To be honest with you, as soon as I read this, I stopped reading the book and said to myself, ugh, another financial guru telling me to stop drinking coffee. I am not going to give up my favorite drink for the sake of saving $5. I was planning to return the book and get a refund. But then I continued reading just to entertain myself and see what kind of nonsense the author was going to talk about. And I'm glad I did, because I was wrong to judge it too quickly. And I found out that the Latte Factor is not actually about lattes, as its name suggests. The reason it is called the Latte Factor is because of the way this concept was born. David says in one of the seminars, a lady complained that what he was teaching was not practical because she barely survives by the end of the month and there is no way she can even save an extra $5 to invest. After analyzing her daily expenses, David found out that she spends around $5 every morning on coffee and a muffin and another $5 on snacks around 11 a.m. So every day she spent $10 by 11 a.m. And it's not even lunchtime yet. David asked the lady to guess how much money she could save by her retirement if she started investing half of that $10. She thought it would maybe be around $70,000 or $80,000. After some calculations, the lady was shocked to find out that if she invested $5 a day with 10% yearly return, she could have $1.2 million by her retirement. Her daily coffee and muffin were costing her $1.2 million. This was a wake-up call for her to change, and this is how the Latte Factor was born. Now, some of you probably think that this doesn't apply to you because you don't drink coffee, and even if you did, you would never waste the kind of money she wasted on lattes. If you think like that, then you are missing the point, just like I did when I first heard about the Latte Factor. What the author is talking about here isn't just lattes. What he's talking about is how we don't realize how much money we waste on little things and how it can change our lives if we simply change our habits just a little bit. Your Latte Factor is probably not the latte, but it's the money you waste on bottled water, cigarettes, soft drinks, candy bars, fast food, memberships, etc. Whatever it happens to be, we all have a Latte Factor. We all throw away too much of our hard-earned money on unnecessary little expenditures without realizing how much they can add up to. The Latte Factor is different for different people. For you, it might be eating out every day or cigarettes. And for another person, it might be a second house or a second car that he doesn't use. Someone may appear rich, but it is impossible to know for sure at first glance. You could be seeing only the tip of the iceberg. Don't be tempted by those who flaunt their wealth. It seems stupid to say so, but the only way to accumulate wealth is not to spend it. Oftentimes, when people say they want to be a millionaire, what they really mean is that they want to spend $1 million. But spending $1 million is literally the opposite of being a millionaire. The wealth is hidden. Wealth is income that is saved, not spent. Wealth is optionality, flexibility, and growth. Wealth is the ability to buy things if necessary. Spending money to show others how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. The more time passes, the less and less I believe in the power of luck in business. Very often, the thing people call luck is just the result of taking many actions. For example, let's say you and I are looking for an investment property to buy. I go and check 10 flats, but you check 100. Who do you think's going to be lucky? Of course you will be luckier, but from outside, it will look like you just came across a great property and bought it. The more actions you take, the better your chances of getting lucky. People who take action get luckier because they create their own luck. This lesson encouraged me to try many things and also be comfortable with most of them not working out. I learned that you can be wrong most of the time and still be very successful. For example, Warren Buffett admitted that he has owned shares in more than 400 different companies in his lifetime. But the most significant gains came from only 10 of them. Many large companies understand this reality as well. For example, if you review all the series that Netflix has produced, you'll see that only a few of them have had significant success. When you realize this, you can accept that it is normal for many things to fail or go wrong. Sometimes all you need is just one idea, one book, one sentence, one person, or one video to change your life. Others looking from outside will think that you just got lucky and met that one person who helped you succeed. But what they don't know is that you contacted probably over 50 people in order to come across that one person. You created your own luck. For every 10 coins you earn, give yourself 1 coin first. No matter how much you earn, set aside at least 10% of your earnings for investment before you spend on anything else. Now, you might say, but isn't all I earn mine to keep? Well, unfortunately, it's not. The government takes its share first, and then you pay for rent, insurance, etc. In the book, there's an analogy between expenses and slavery. It's a very powerful way to see every expense as you being a slave for someone else. If I earn $3,000 a month and pay $1,000 for rent, then it means 10 days I slave for my landlord, 2 days for my insurance company, 1 day for my internet provider, etc. And that's how most of us end up paying everyone else, but not ourselves. Now, one group of people watching the video is going to say that 10% is too much to save for investment. If you are among this group, then imagine the following scenario. Let's say you go to work tomorrow and your boss tells you that the company is in a very bad situation and he has to fire you. Or you have to agree to work with a 10% less salary. I'm sure you'll be very angry. You will complain for a while, but you're not going to quit your job. After a while, you will adjust to the new situation and will not even feel the difference in the quality of your life. I personally think that you don't have to start with 10%. You can even start with 3 or 5%. The important thing is to start with some amount so that you start training your saving muscles. Another powerful analogy is to see every euro you save and invest as a new soldier you add to your army who is going to fight day and night tirelessly to capture another soldier to work for you. And that newly captured soldier will also fight to capture another soldier. This process will keep continuing. But if you start spending, then you'll start killing your own soldiers. Few people have a real sense of how much debt they've accumulated. They focus on the amount of money they have to pay each month and forget that these payments will last for years. How many years will it take you to pay off your house and your car? Don't forget your credit cards and that money you owe to your brother. Put everything on paper and you will see that your debt is much bigger than you think. Paying your debts is probably your biggest monthly expense. I can bet you pay more on your mortgage alone than all your basic household expenses together. Am I right? Imagine if you could stop making all these payments. How much money would you have left every month to buy the things you love? This is the idea. Pay for what you want in the present and stop paying for your past. So let's get started right away. Get all the documents you need and list your debts in order, with the smallest payoff first. At this point, you can ignore things like interest rates. In the items section, write what your debt is. Total payoff is how much you still have to pay before paying off that debt. Use this value to rank your debts from smallest to largest. So the smallest debt should be on the top of the list and the largest at the bottom. Under minimum payment, write down what is the minimum you need to pay each month so that your debt doesn't get even bigger. In our example, we'll suppose you earn $2,000 a month. First, deduct your basic expenses such as food, rent, clothing, etc. Let's say your basic expenses add up to $900. Now pay the minimum payment on your debts, except the first one on the list. In this case, you will pay your last vacation and your car loan, which will add up to $750. In the end, you earned $2,000 minus $900 of your basic expenses and $750 of your other debts. You are left with $350. Use all that money that is left to pay your first debt. In our example, it's your credit card debt. When that first debt is paid off completely, do the same with your second smallest debt. In this case, your last vacation debt. You will find that this second debt, although larger, will be easier to pay off because you no longer have credit card debt eating up a portion of your income. This technique is called debt snowball. Just like a snowball, you start small, but by the time it gets bigger while you are paying off some of the loans, which gives you a bigger amount of savings to pay off the next loan. I can hear you saying, but my debt is too big. Will I have to wait 35 years to pay off my house to get rich? No way. If you have a very large debt, such as a 35-year mortgage, then leave that debt out of your list for now. The reason is simple. Even if you have a high salary and pay extra on your mortgage, a debt this big will still take a few years before you finish paying it off. This delay will discourage you and cause the next steps of your total money makeover to be delayed, and they are essential for you to start building your wealth soon. Ideally, step 2 should take a few months, up to 2 years at the most, so that you are free of as much debt as possible and can move on to step 3. If the large debt you have is not the house where you live, the author advises you to get rid of the item, sell the car, and buy a cheaper one, for example. But don't do this with the house where you live unless you have very good reasons to do so. If you find it's too difficult or too slow to pay your debts with your income alone, make a temporary sacrifice to supplement your income. Work overtime, find a second part-time job, do freelance work, sell the things you don't need, but don't sell irreplaceable family heirlooms. No matter how much money you make, you can't buy them back. There are many ways to earn extra income that can help you speed up this process. The faster you are debt-free, the faster you will start accumulating wealth. Let's look at your situation now. You are no longer deep in debt, but you still have a few payments. Maybe you had to sell things such as your car and other valuable items you used to have. Your quality of life will likely drop for a while. This is necessary. And everyone who has gone through the total money makeover and is now a millionaire has also experienced this situation. There are 2 main problems with cutting costs. Number 1, cutting costs has a small impact, just like exercise has on weight loss. After all, there are only a few things you can cut. When you start going to the gym, you lose a few kilos quite fast, but then it stagnates. A similar thing happens with cutting expenses. Number 2, it doesn't work at all for low-income people. There are many people who need to borrow at the end of the month to cover their expenses until their salary arrives. If you earn $1,000 a month, but your expenses are $1,100, frankly, where can you cut costs? All this doesn't mean that we have to completely ignore cutting expenses and ignore the books written about it. No, cut costs where you can and monitor your expenses regularly to make sure you're not throwing away money on unnecessary things, such as forgotten subscriptions. But use your main energy to increase your income. Of course, increasing your income is much harder than reducing your spending, but it is the most effective way. Imagine it this way. Your brain is divided into multiple boxes. You have a different box for money, a different one for family, a different one for friends, etc. And each of these boxes have similar boxes inside that are designed to hold different categories of information. For example, in your money box, there is a separate box for investment, a separate one for saving, retirement, gambling, vacation, donation, bonuses, regular expenses, etc. And depending on which box you put money in, its value changes automatically, and you treat it differently. For example, you would not take $2,000 from your saving account and buy a new iPhone, but you are highly likely to do it if you recently got a bonus from your employer for $2,000. Somehow, money coming as a bonus or as a tax refund feels like something that can easily be spent. On the other hand, money in our savings account is more sacred, and we would not touch it. But this doesn't make sense, and we shouldn't treat a $100 bill differently than another $100 bill in our account just because we have labeled it differently. But the reality is that we do it, and it costs us quite a bit of money. In psychology, the name of such bias is called mental accounting. Let me give you a few real-life cases where you can see how mental accounting causes us to make poor financial decisions. For example, many people make purchases with high-interest credit cards, but don't touch the money in their savings accounts that earn only 1%. Financially, it makes sense not to take a 20% loan and use the money in a savings account, but our mental accounting makes us believe that they are different and can't be mixed. Another example, let's say you invest $1,000 into Bitcoin, and after 2 months, you double your initial investment. In this scenario, you are highly likely to treat the extra $1,000 differently and make risky investments with it. Just stop and ask yourself, why should I treat the second $1,000 differently? Isn't it just like my initial $1,000? So why should I take more risk with it? Obviously, you shouldn't treat them differently, but mental accounting tells you that you can take more risk with the money you just earned. And that is how most of us end up with taking high risks and even losing the initial $1,000 we put in. I will share a few tips on how you can use mental accounting in your favor and make smart financial decisions. These are not financial tips, and I'm not a financial expert. They are examples to help you to start thinking and organizing your money differently. Tip number 1. As you just saw, because of mental accounting, we treat $1,000 in a checking account differently than $1,000 in a retirement account or in a savings account. So, if you want to reduce your spending, then keep very little money in the checking account or in your fun account and put the rest under a savings account. It is less likely that you will spend the money in your savings account. Mental accounting reduces the pain of paying. As soon as you say this money is for fun, you will feel less pain to spend it. But if you put the fun money into savings account, then it will be difficult for you to spend $5 every day on Starbucks coffee. Tip number 2. Mental accounting is a natural human weakness and is usually taken care of by some companies or organizations. For example, casinos make you change money into chips because it will be easier for you to spend the chips than the real cash. And guess who else takes advantage of this weakness? Banks. Banks know that money spent from credit cards isn't the same as cash, but at the end of the day, it is the same, and you are the one who pays for it. So try to remember this and don't treat the credit card, debit card, and cash differently. I know it's a hard thing to do, and that's why using cash is actually easier. Tip number 3, have a goal in advance for the extra income you will get. For example, this year, I will invest all my bonuses, salary increases, and tax returns into my retirement account. If you don't do this, you are highly likely just to spend the extra income on needless purchases. For example, when I was studying at the university, I was also working in a company. Since I was a student, I could stay in a dorm in a shared room and eat at the university cafeteria quite cheaply. This meant that I could easily save 50% of my income. However, once I got married and moved to a flat, I could save only 3% at max. This made me feel terrible because I couldn't save as much as I used to, and that's one of the biggest problems with sticking to a fixed saving rate. If life is dynamic, then why should the saving rate be static? That is why the best saving advice is save what you can. If you're single and can save 40%, then save 40%. If you're married and have kids and can only save 2%, then save 2%. If you follow this advice, then you will experience far less stress and far more overall happiness. Heinz Berggruen came to be admired for his insight for investing in art, but the reality is that it was not pure insight. He simply bought large quantities of art, and a tiny portion of it turned out to be valuable art. This means that Berggruen was wrong most of the time. However, he managed to get it right. If you want to dive into the world of entrepreneurship and investment, you must understand that things comply with the 80-20 rule. Seasoned investors and large companies expect that 80% of their investment decisions will fail. Fees are the killers of your earnings, especially in the long run. However, most of the time, fees are introduced as a minor point. They usually say, it's just a 1% fee. It's not a lot, or it's not a big deal. But let me give you an example, and you will see how a 1% fee makes a huge difference in the long run. Let's say your grandmother gives you and your brother $100,000 each as a gift. Both of you think that you are young and don't need the money now, so you decide to invest it for the long term. Your brother does research and finds a company that charges a 1% fee and pays 11% interest. However, you don't do research, and you invest with a company that charges a 2% fee and also pays 11% interest. Let's fast forward 30 years and see how the 1% difference in the fees impacted your earnings. After 30 years, your brother's total earnings will be around $1,744,000, but your earnings will be $1,326,000. As you can see, everything is the same. Only the 1% difference in the fees led to $418,000 fewer earnings compared to your brother. In other words, you lose 23.9% of your earnings because of a 1% difference in fees. You're not going to get rich renting out your time. That is not financial freedom. The problem with being a teacher, a lecturer, a doctor, or a lawyer is that what you're doing is trading some of your time and effort for money. Only poor people exchange time for money. It's not a wise way to use your time because you have limited hours in a day. Let's suppose you now found a way to keep a robot working for you 24/7. That robot is a nice, restless guy, but he can't make as much as you do because people are willing to pay robots less than they pay people. So if your robot makes $150 an hour, it'll take him 22 years to reach $100 million. Less time than it would take you if you were working restlessly for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, with no holidays ever. Now, can you imagine what would happen if you bought a second robot? $100 million in 11 years. 4 robots will give you $100 million in only 5 years. Maybe you're thinking, but I can't buy a robot to work for me. It's not realistic. Well, you can. The robot is right here in front of you. It's called the internet. The internet is your leverage. Let's understand what leverage means. Business leverage comes from capital, labor, and products with no marginal cost of replication. Labor means people working for you. It's the oldest form of leverage. It might impress some people, but it's messy and unstable. Capital means you already have some money because someone gave it to you, so you can use it to make more money. Now, using the internet for things such as code and media is permissionless leverage. It means you don't need other people to work for you or to give you money. You don't need anyone's permission. You can use the power of the internet and create software and media tools that work for you while you sleep. That's the real definition of wealth. Business and assets that can earn while you sleep. For example, if you're trying to sell an ebook, you'll have some cost to produce it, but once it's done, you can sell as much as you want with almost zero cost. People do crazy things for status. Do you know what the status is? It's the opinion other people have about you. When your neighbor buys an expensive car and you want to buy an expensive car too because you don't want to rank lower, you're paying for status. You're literally buying other people's opinion about you. You want them to think you're worth it. You want them to think that you too can have a car like that. Some people prefer to look rich and stay poor than give up status. Status is purely about your ego. As long as you allow your ego to command your actions, you won't be truly free. You should work on building wealth, not status. Weight gain doesn't happen overnight. Instead, it creeps up on us a few grams at a time, and before we know it, we're 10 kilos heavier. So what do? We overwhelm ourselves with small choices such as which brand of protein bar to buy, which running shoes are the best, instead of focusing on the big wins of eating less and exercising more. If you think about it, money works in the same way. We spend years obsessing over every single tiny financial detail and never take action on the areas that matter. Before we know it, we're financially in trouble and fixing it seems overwhelming. As a result, we just ignore the topic of money completely because it makes us feel guilty, like our fitness and food. The reason comparing food to money makes sense is because when it comes to food, we don't track our calorie intake. In a similar way, we don't track our spending. We eat more than we realize, and in a similar way, we spend more than we realize. Now you're probably saying, okay, I heard enough about mistakes. Can you tell me then what works when it comes to saving and investing? The answer is automating and building a system that saves, invests, and pays your bills while you sleep. I'll explain this more in a bit, but for now, keep in mind that if you follow the steps that I'm going to describe, you will be ahead of 99% of people. You will gain 3 big advantages. Number 1, your behavior of spending, saving, and investing will be automated. Number 2, you will not have to force yourself. Number 3, all of your money will go where it's supposed to. automatically. If you're interested in automation and creating a conscious spending plan, then here is a 2-step formula. First, categorize your spending. Recommended categorization can look like this. Category 1, fixed costs. 50 to 60% of your net income should generally be going to fixed costs. These are things like your rent, your mortgage, utilities, etc. Category 2, investment. 10% should be going to investments. These are long-term retirement investments. Category 3, short-term savings. This is where 5 to 10% of your money will go. These are things like saving for a down payment on a house, gifts, or a vacation. Finally, here's the most exciting category: guilt-free spending. 20 to 25% should go here. This money is going to be used for things such as eating out at restaurants, buying new clothes, or whatever else you want. The first tip is the 2x rule. According to this rule, anytime you want to splurge on something, you have to take the same amount of money and invest it as well. The author says this rule works because it removes the psychological guilt associated with purchases, since you also make an equal-sized investment. This rule also helps you to reevaluate the purchase, because you are going to save double the amount, half for the purchase itself and half for investing. The second tip is to spend money on the things that maximize your long-term fulfillment. The most difficult part of the course is figuring out what you truly want out of life and what increases your fulfillment. For example, if buying lattes every day increases your productivity and makes you feel great, then according to the author, you should do it. Personally, these days I buy coffee almost every day from Starbucks. I used to feel super guilty about spending $5 on coffee. For a while, I even stopped going to Starbucks, but soon realized that it was a mistake. First of all, I get distracted a lot if I work from home. I am more productive if I work from Starbucks. Starbucks also replaces the need for me to rent an office because every time I buy coffee, I work there for at least 4 hours. So for me, buying coffee at Starbucks helps me to be productive and increases my fulfillment. For you, it might be something else that you can easily justify the cost. Of course, we can all use false justification to convince others, but we can't lie to ourselves. Deep down, you will know when the cost isn't justified. This sounds cliche, but the best spending method is the one that fits you personally. You need to take the time to analyze your expenses to find out which ones increase your happiness and which do not. Research shows that spending money in the following ways is most likely to increase your overall happiness: buying experiences, treating yourself on occasion, buying extra time, paying up front, such as an all-inclusive vacation, spending on others, etc. One way to retire is to have so much money saved that your passive income covers all your expenses. A second way is you just have zero or close to zero expenses, like a monk. And a third way is you're doing something you love. You enjoy it so much that it's not about the money anymore. This way, you could work forever and never get tired. This is early retirement. People think you're working, but you're actually having fun and enjoyment. It's just like vacation time. The author says his definition of retirement is when you stop sacrificing today for an imaginary tomorrow. It doesn't matter if you're working or not, if you're earning or not. What matters is that you're living today as you wish, instead of putting off your desires for when it's financially possible. That means you work not because you have to pay the bills that will come soon, but because you love your work and you want to do it all the time. It's not about making money for the future anymore. It's about enjoying life today. If you go to a financial planner, he will look at your expenses and advise you to cut the expenses, so you will stop drinking lattes. Kiyosaki says, why don't we look at the other side of the equation and find ways to expand our means so that the price of a latte becomes nothing? Cutting expenses is a passion killer. Don't kill your passion. Rather, find ways to feed your passion. Always ask, how can I afford it? We always hear, study well and get a good job in a big company. But we rarely hear, study hard and become an entrepreneur. That is why people don't realize that there is another option. They don't even consider it as an option. We are trained enough to ask for fish, but not trained enough to catch a fish. In communism, government must build the houses and provide jobs. But in capitalism, individuals build the economy. Unfortunately, most people still live in the communism mindset and expect the government to take care of everything. The author strongly advises becoming an entrepreneur because taxes and law are written in favor of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are the ones who are building the economy, creating new jobs, developing real estate, and investing. Government needs entrepreneurs, otherwise there would be no jobs, and government could not collect taxes. Many people think becoming an entrepreneur is risky, so they want a secure job in a company. But there is no secure job thing anymore. Most of the jobs are moving to India, the Philippines, and other cheap countries. Having a job is actually riskier than becoming an entrepreneur because when you have a job, you only have one client, and that is your employer. If he fires you, then you are in deep trouble. But if you are an entrepreneur, you have many clients. Many people who get a lump sum of money spend the entire amount within a year. You've probably seen people who go on a strict diet and lose many kilos within a short period of time. But after a while, they return to their previous shape and diet because they didn't develop the systems and habits necessary. The craziest part is that usually, people who get sudden wealth are no better off than when they started. Their fashion, standard of living, and everything else are surprisingly the same. Getting rich is like learning how to ride a bicycle. Once you learn it, you never forget it and no one can take it away from you. Even after many years, you can still ride it. A few days ago, I was listening to a CEO who said, "You can take away everything we have now and leave us with nothing in the middle of nowhere, and we will be in the same place after a short period of time." I really loved his attitude, and I think it nicely explains the main message from this lesson. You can also be lucky when you become the best at what you do. This way, you don't have to watch out for opportunists. They will find you. It's like you attract luck. This is the best kind of luck because if you're the best at what you do, there's no way you won't have it. For example, let's say you're the best person in the world at deep sea diving. You are brave enough to dive deeper than anyone else. Now suppose somebody finds a sunken treasure ship off the coast they can't get to. Well, their luck just became your luck because they're going to come to you to get the treasure, and you're going to get paid for it. This is an extreme example, of course, but it shows well the difference between blind luck and the kind of luck you should count on. The first person had blind luck finding the treasure, but that doesn't happen to most people. You, on the other hand, created your own luck by becoming the best deep diver. This is the only kind of luck the author believes we should count on, and some people would say it isn't even luck at all. Several weeks ago, I was talking to a friend, and we started to talk about a book called Think and Grow Rich. He told me that he has seen many people buying and reading the book, but has never seen anyone actually becoming rich. He was trying to prove that ideas in this book don't work, which I don't agree with. I strongly believe that people don't get rich because they don't take any action. They read the book, start saying some affirmations, setting goals, visualizing, and that's all they do. They don't take any damn action. They want to win $1 million from the lottery, but they don't even take action and buy a lottery ticket. Now, I'm not recommending buying a lottery ticket to get rich. In fact, I've never bought a lottery ticket in my life. But even if your goal is to win the lottery, it requires an action, which is buying the lottery ticket. So many people believe that if they constantly visualize living a rich life, somehow money will magically show up on their doorstep. And when it does not happen, they say, "Think and Grow Rich is garbage." If you want to get lucky, if you want to be rich, take action. There is a danger of never having enough. People can have it all: wealth, high-value property, and power. But they can also take a chance and throw it all away because they wanted more. The author tells the story of Rajat Gupta, who was orphaned during his teens, but years later would go on to obtain an MBA from Harvard and become the CEO of McKinsey & Company. In 2008, the value of his estate was reported to be $100 million, but Gupta wanted more, and he proved it. In 2008, during the Goldman Sachs crisis, Warren Buffett decided to invest $5 billion in the bank to help it survive. Since Gupta was a member of the Goldman Sachs board of directors, he got this information before the public did. So he decided to secretly agree to buy Goldman Sachs shares before they rose because of Buffett's investment. Gupta was arrested for insider trading. This is how he ruined his reputation and his career, motivated by the greed of never having enough. In this chapter, the author leaves some important lessons. 1. The most difficult financial skill is to make the goal stop drifting away. The goal is set further and further when the taste for more wealth and power increases faster than satisfaction, and this is a red flag that alerts you that you are probably about to take more and more risks irrationally. True happiness is in the satisfaction of having enough, not in constant expectation. 2. Social comparison is the problem. Comparing yourself to others is unnecessary torture you should avoid. There will always be someone getting better results than you do. There will always be someone higher up the ladder. Comparing yourself to them will steal your joy. Run your own race. 3. There are many things that are not worth risking, regardless of the potential gain. Reputation is priceless. Freedom and independence are priceless. Family and friends are priceless. Being loved by those you love is priceless. Happiness is priceless. If you want to keep all of this with you, you need to know when to stop taking risks that can harm all these valuable things. If you spend $4,000 every month, then the amount you need to have in your emergency fund is between $12,000 and $24,000. The decision depends on the type of job you have and how secure you feel with your income. If you have a stable income, you can focus on saving for 3 months. But if you have variable income or depend on a lot of external conditions, 6 months is right for you. You'll use it for situations you can't control. Discovering a health problem that needs long-term treatment, experiencing damage to your home, losing your job. Anything that makes it impossible for you to work and maintain an income, or is a too high expense to fit your monthly income. Only use your emergency fund for emergencies. Buying a gift for your mother is not an emergency. Her birthday is on the same day every year, so you should save for it in your budget. David Schwartz, the author of the book The Magic of Thinking Big, says that the big thinkers see what is possible, what can be done with their life, not just what their life is at this moment. On the other hand, small thinkers see only what is currently in front of them and nothing else. A small thinker will look at an old house and say, "This is an old house in very bad condition, so it will only sell for $50,000. On the other hand, big thinkers will look at the same house and say, "Yes, this is an old house, but I can plant trees around the house, clean up the yard, and do renovation, and sell it for $100,000. Simply put, one sees what is, and another sees what is possible. Most people can't think big. They don't even let themselves dream about big things. I'm not saying that think big and everything will be great. Not at all. Thinking big is just the first step, and there are probably 100 more steps after that. For example, let's say you're now making $1,000 a month and you start setting big goals. So your first big goal is making $10,000 a month. As soon as you set the goal and start thinking big, it will start guiding you to your destination like a GPS. Soon, your behavior will change and you will start doing things differently. You will start reading different books. You will start watching different videos, and you will start saying no to certain friends. Thinking big will lead to doing big things, and doing big things leads to having big things. First, you become the big person you want to become. Then you do the things the big person does, and only then will you have the things the big person has. Most people believe the opposite is true. They say, first give me the $10,000 a month, then I will start doing the things that the person with $10,000 a month income would do, and only then I can become that person. It doesn't work like that. You have to become the person first, and only then the rest will come. And this can't happen if you don't allow yourself to think big. Imagine you and your friend are hanging around in the city center and you want to eat a baguette. Your friend approaches the stand and says, "Hello, I want to buy a baguette. Please give me a baguette." The seller behind the stand will most likely be confused and ask what kind of baguette your friend wants, because there are many types of baguettes. This is exactly the same approach poor people use when it comes to becoming rich. They just want to be rich, but they don't know what a rich life looks like for them. If you don't know exactly what you want, then the girl who is selling the baguette will just give you any baguette she chooses and you will walk away. Now imagine you approach and say, "Hello, I want a tuna baguette with smoked cheese, but I don't want this type of bread. Give me that dark bread with sunflower seeds. Don't put onion, put some cucumber, tomato, and toast it." Guess what? The girl is going to give you exactly what you asked for. In the same way, rich people do not send out mixed messages. Only poor people do. The number one reason most people don't get what they want is that they don't know what they want. You must know what that rich life looks like for you and must have a plan to get there. For example, for me, rich life means having the freedom to work when I want, where I want. I want to be able to take a taxi whenever I want. I don't like taking public transport and feeling sweaty, especially if I'm going to some important meeting. When I go to a restaurant, I want to be able to open the menu and choose anything I want without looking at the price column first. I want to be able to take my parents on a nice vacation twice a year. I want to be able to help people around me when they are having financial difficulties. I want to be able to wake up at 11 a.m. on Tuesday and go for a walk in the park. I want to be able to go to the gym in the middle of the day and come back whenever I feel like it. This is my rich life, and I have a plan on how to get there. When I started to look at money as my life energy, I started to become more aware of how I spent it. Every time I wanted to buy something, I had to ask if it is worth my life energy. I started seeing prices not in dollars or euros, but in hours or weeks of my life. For example, the new phone I wanted to buy was no longer $800, but 1 month of my life spent working in a job that I didn't like. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that this is just forcing yourself to feel guilty about every purchase so that you don't make that purchase. But that's not true. When you see your money as your life energy, you suddenly value it more. And when you value it more, you start spending it on the things that you truly want, instead of spending it on a second pair of shoes that you'll probably wear only once. Here's a question for you. What is the price of your life energy? How much is your every hour truly worth? The traditional way to calculate this is simply to take the amount of your net pay and divide it by the number of hours you have to work. For example, if you work 160 hours per month and your net monthly salary is $500, then we need to divide $500 by 160, and that equals $3.12 per hour. However, it's not that simple. To calculate your real hourly wage, you need to take into account other factors, such as the time and money you use for everything related to your work. Think of all the money you must spend to keep your job, such as transport costs, the costs of eating outside, the cost of living in an expensive city because that is where your job is, and medical costs because of work-related stress. You need to deduct all those job-related expenses. This is how you'll know what you earn for each hour of your life's energy. A few days ago, I was listening to billionaire Michael Saylor, who was explaining how he lost $900,000 overnight in Argentina in his business. He had $1 million in a bank account, and the government passed a law saying that all foreign currencies must be converted to local currency. Once conversion happened, they devalued the local currency, and the local currency lost 90% of its value against the dollar. Suddenly, the $1 million in the bank account was now only worth $100,000. He lost 90% of his money. This is why holding foreign currency within the country isn't completely safe. A better strategy is to hold it offshore, outside the country. Even though holding foreign currencies offshore is better than holding them within the country, the challenging part is deciding which foreign currency to hold. Major currencies such as the dollar and euro are being printed faster than ever before, and they are rapidly losing value. Compared to small local currencies, major currencies have a better chance of surviving once the dust settles. But still not a completely safe option if you ask me. That's why I personally prefer mainly holding gold and silver offshore besides the foreign currencies. Have you ever been grocery shopping and spent several hours in several stores so that you can find the cheapest groceries to save 50 or 60 cents? Or have you been waiting in line for an hour so that you can get a free hamburger? If you have done this, then you have a poor person mentality. I'm sorry to say that, but let me explain. Of course, it is not a bad thing to save money while you are shopping, but this changes when it comes to how much you will save compared to the time you will spend for that saving. If you spend 1 hour to find the cheapest oranges so that you can save 60 cents, then the value of your 1 hour is 60 cents. Compared to this, rich people don't care about saving 60 cents. They understand the value of their time and constantly think about new things they can do so that the value of their 1 hour is equal to $6,000. During an interview with a journalist, Robert Kiyosaki learned that the journalist strived to become a best-selling author. He realized she was a great writer and that she should pursue that. She told him that she had tried, but no one was interested. He accidentally offended her when he told her to take a sales course so she could promote herself. She became defensive. She replied, "I have a master's degree in English literature. Why would I go to school to learn to be a salesperson? I am a professional. I went to school to be trained in a profession so that I would not have to be a salesperson. I hate salespeople. All they want is money." She packed her things. Robert Kiyosaki gently pointed out that he was the best-selling author, not the best writing author. This statement only infuriated her more, and the interview ended. The world has many successful and talented people, doctors, lawyers, dentists, and still they struggle financially. But as a wise business consultant once said, they are one skill away from great wealth. The law of affection says that to make a million, you need to help a million people. Of course, it does not have to be precisely a million people, but I think you got the point. The more people you help, the more you give to others, the more you receive. At first, this might not make sense, and you can say, how can helping others and giving more make me rich? For example, you can say, if I go out right now and give $1,000 to 100 people, how will it make me rich? You're right, it won't make you rich. Most probably, people who receive money from you will run to the shop to buy something that they don't even need. Then what is the good form of giving? For example, let's say you create some type of product that helps older people. This would be a very higher form of giving. This is why Jeff Bezos is richer than the lady you saw yesterday in the post office. Jeff Bezos has built Amazon, which helps millions of people to shop safely and easily all around the world. But the lady in the post office is mainly helping herself and her family. Please don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to belittle the lady in the post office. If the lady wants to help herself and her family, there is nothing wrong with that. But according to the law of affection, she will not be rich because she's not impacting and changing the lives of many people in a positive way. Dave says that many people think that debt is the best way to grow and get things in life. That's what most people think. But with Total Money Makeover, you won't think and act like everyone else does, because most people are not millionaires. Here's the rule. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. Before you started this makeover, you would use your credit card when you needed to pay for things you didn't have money for. These can be things you want, such as new shoes, or they can be things you need, such as a car repair. Now, you'll use the money in your starter emergency fund to pay for those things you need. And do you know why? Because from now on, no credit card. Never. I know you must be thinking that the author is crazy and a credit card is the best way to control your bills, buy more expensive things without messing up your monthly budget, and make your life easier. But according to the author, all are myths. More than 70% of people can't pay off their credit cards every month, so they lose all the advantages that might have existed. Besides, do you know the best way to spend less? Seeing the money. When you use a credit card, you don't notice the money going away. They're just numbers you don't have to worry about until you see the statement. So when you're out with your credit card, you think, it's okay to spend just $10 more. It's only $10. Now, if you have a pile of $10 bills in your hands and start using a bill here, another there, and you start noticing your pile shrinking in size, you can see your money going away. Imagine yourself now with $500 in cash in your hands and using all that money to buy some clothes at a store. It's not as pleasant as just going home with all the bags and ignoring the numbers, is it? Buying things with cash is unpleasant, and it's supposed to be. It means your hard earned money is going away. You need to make sure it's worth it. Think about it. If credit cards were good for you, why would banks give them away and push so hard to convince you to take them when you refuse? They're great for the bank, not you. The best investment opportunities don't require advertisement in a brochure. The best investment opportunities don't even leave the office room. It gets consumed internally. For example, when a real estate agent finds the best property, he doesn't advertise it on the website. If he can, he buys it himself or makes sure that it is purchased internally by his company or colleagues around him. The conclusion is this: be very careful with financial experts from whom you take advice. They work for a company and are paid by the company. So whose interest do you think they will put first? One of the biggest mistakes with money is relying solely on salary to fund short-term spending needs, with no savings to protect you from unexpected expenses in the future. We like to think that we are saving for something certain, like buying a car or for retirement, but the reality is we don't know what will happen tomorrow, and we can't be sure where we will spend our savings. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't plan. It means that you should leave room for error while planning. I personally know many people who have tried to create their own business, but have failed and eventually gave up after 3 or 4 failures. It always amazes me how these people expected to be successful after a few trials. Giving up after 3 to 4 failures is like starting to go to the gym to get in shape, but after a few days quitting because you didn't see any results. If you want to get in shape, you need to be consistent. You need to change your exercise routine if it's not effective. You need to try a different diet. You need to try a different trainer until you find what works for you. Unfortunately, people do not apply the same mentality when it comes to getting financially fit.